The silence in the courtroom was a living, breathing entity, heavier than the stale air, punctuated only by the nervous shuffle of feet and the quiet scratching of a pen. My heart pounded, a frantic drum against my ribs, a desperate echo of the hope that had sustained me through years of torment. Across the polished oak table, meticulously arranged, sat Richard, my ex-husband, rigid and distant, beside Veronica, his new wife. Her face, usually composed, now held a subtle smirk, a chilling promise of my definitive defeat. Then I saw them. My children, my very heartbeats. Lily, now a lanky 15-year-old, sat stiffly, her eyes cold and distant. Tom, a fragile 13, refused to meet my gaze, his young shoulders hunched under an invisible, crushing weight. They were strategically placed in the front row by Veronica, a cruel testament to their supposed loyalty. The judge, stern and unyielding, cleared his throat, the sound reverberating with finality. My lawyer, Miss Davies, a quiet but formidable presence, rose, her voice steady and calm, beginning what felt like the final, desperate plea for my very soul. This was the moment. The agonizing culmination of years of insidious whispers, venomous lies, and calculated cruelty that had systematically torn my family apart. Veronica's smirk widened, her eyes gleaming with anticipated triumph. She believed she had won everything, secured her place. She had no idea that the fortress of deceit she had built around my innocent children was about to crumble, brick by agonizing brick, under the undeniable weight of her own recorded words, her own digital footprint. The brutal truth, long buried, was finally emerging, not through my frantic shouts, but through the quiet, irrefutable evidence I had painstakingly collected in the shadows. Her unchallenged reign was about to become the stage for her own spectacular, public undoing. For years, my children, Lily and Tom, had been systematically turned against me by my ex-husband, Richard, and his new wife, Veronica. Their malicious whispers and fabricated tales had slowly eroded the loving bond one once shared, transforming them into strangers filled with resentment. I watched, heartbroken, as their innocent minds were poisoned, their affection replaced by cold distance. This painful alienation left me isolated, grieving for a connection that felt irretrievably lost. But beneath the profound sorrow, a steel-like determination formed. I refused to let their lies define my relationship with my children. This courtroom, a place of last resort, was about to become the stage for a truth so undeniable, it would shatter Veronica's facade and, hopefully, reclaim the hearts of my beloved children. My name is Victoria Hayes, and for 55 years, I had navigated life with principles of unwavering honesty, tireless hard work, and genuine connection. I had poured my heart into building a successful career as a landscape architect, creating serene and beautiful spaces for families across our close-knit community. My clients were cherished friends, trusting me not only with their gardens, but also their quiet confidences. Our town, nestled in the rolling hills of upstate New York, deeply valued tradition, mutual support, and strong familial bonds. I was a respected figure, sought out for my discerning eye and calm demeanor, and above all, a beloved mother to my two children, Lily and Tom. My marriage to Richard began with genuine love and shared dreams. He was a promising young real estate developer, ambitious and charismatic. We built our lives together, raising our children in a home filled with laughter and love. Lily, our eldest, was a bright, sensitive girl with a passion for reading. Tom, our younger son, was a vibrant, energetic boy, happiest outdoors. Our family was my sanctuary, the core of my existence. We faced challenges, but always together, united. As Richard's career soared, a subtle shift occurred. His ambition became a consuming force, overshadowing everything else. He worked longer hours, traveled more frequently, and his once warm demeanor cooled, replaced by detachment. Quiet evenings faded, replaced by his absence or preoccupied silence. I tried to bridge the gap, but my efforts were met with dismissal. The love felt like it was eroding. Then Veronica entered his life, ostensibly as his new executive assistant. She was everything I was not, young, strikingly beautiful, with an almost unnerving charm. From our first introduction, a subtle tremor of disquiet lingered beneath her polished surface. Her eyes, though captivating, held a certain coldness, a calculating glint. She was impeccably dressed, her words perfectly chosen, her laughter a fraction too performative. I tried to be gracious, inviting her to dinners, but her compliments felt hollow, her interest fleeting. It was as if she performed a role. The red flags began to appear during Richard's increasingly frequent business trips. He would often extend them, claiming urgent deals, but his explanations felt vague, inconsistent. Then came the whispers through mutual acquaintances, whispers of Richard and Veronica seen together outside of professional contexts, their bond seemingly more intimate. I confronted Richard, gently at first, then with desperation. He vehemently denied everything, attributing my concerns to stress or jealousy. His denials were convincing, his anger at my lack of trust unsettling. But the seed of doubt sprouted. The marriage, once strong, became a fragile shell. The love withered, replaced by a cold, aching void. The final conversation was quiet. Richard simply stated he wanted a divorce, claiming we had grown apart. Veronica's presence, though unspoken, hung heavy in the air. The divorce was amicable on paper, negotiated quickly and cleanly, ensuring the children's well-being and a fair division of assets. Richard insisted on joint custody, and I, naive in my belief we could co-parent amicably, readily agreed. I genuinely believed we could still prioritize our children, protecting them from the fallout. This belief, rooted in my unwavering faith in goodness, was perhaps my greatest strength, but also, as I would soon discover, my most dangerously exploitable vulnerability. I had no idea the real battle for my children's hearts was just beginning. The initial aftermath of the divorce was deceptively calm, a fragile truce I mistook for genuine co-parenting. Richard and I maintained a polite, distant cordiality, primarily communicating about Lily and Tom's schedules. The children seemed to adjust, albeit with the quiet sadness any child of divorce carries. They spent alternating weeks with each of us, and while transitions were sometimes difficult, routines provided stability. I cherished my weeks with them, filling our home with laughter, helping with homework, continuing our beloved family traditions. Then, subtle shifts began, almost imperceptible at first. Small things, barely noticeable to anyone but a mother deeply attuned to her children. Lily, always eager to share her school day, became withdrawn after a weekend with her father. Tom, usually bursting with stories, offered only monosyllabic answers about his time at Richard's new house. I attributed it to adjustment, to normal challenges. The first definitive incident, the moment the insidious nature of their manipulation became undeniable, occurred just 3 months after the divorce. It was Lily's 12th birthday, a day I had planned meticulously, her favorite cake, a surprise party, concert tickets. We had confirmed arrangements weeks in advance. Her father would drop her off by noon. Noon came and went. Then 1 o'clock, then 2. My calls to Richard went straight to voicemail. My texts went unanswered. Panic, cold and sharp, began to prickle at my skin. Finally, at almost 3, Lily called me from Richard's phone, her voice flat, devoid of excitement. "Mom, I'm not coming," she said, her tone devoid of emotion. "Dad and Veronica said we're having a family dinner here instead. And Veronica already made me a cake." My heart plummeted, a painful, sickening lurch. "But Lily Bug," I began, my voice trembling, "we have your party. Your friends are here, your cake." She cut me off, her voice surprisingly firm, almost rehearsed. "I don't want to come, Mom. It's boring. And Veronica said your cakes are always dry anyway." The words hit me like a physical blow. Not just the cancellation, but the chillingly precise mimicry of Veronica's dismissive tone, the casual cruelty in comparing my heartfelt effort to Veronica's alternative. Lily, my sweet, sensitive Lily, would never have said something so hurtful unless it had been planted and rehearsed. When Richard finally called hours later, his tone was unapologetic, dismissive. She chose to stay here, Victoria. Veronica made a lovely dinner. You shouldn't try to force her. You're being too emotional. He subtly blamed me, painting my heartbreak as overreaction, my planning as an attempt to control Lily. Veronica's presence, though unspoken, was palpable in his every word. I stood in my living room, surrounded by untouched party decorations, the cake on the counter, the silence amplifying the crushing weight of betrayal. It wasn't just a missed birthday party, it was a deliberate act of sabotage, designed to alienate my daughter, to undermine my role as a mother, to paint me as undesirable. It was the first undeniable crack in amicable co-parenting, the first clear evidence that Richard and Veronica were actively working to turn my children against me. A cold, hard resolve began to form within me, replacing despair. This was not a misunderstanding. This was war, a silent, insidious war for the hearts and minds of my children, and I was not about to lose it. The pain ignited a fierce determination to fight for my family, no matter the cost. The incident with Lily's birthday party was just the first tremor, a chilling precursor to the seismic shift that would follow. The once subtle manipulations quickly escalated into a relentless campaign designed to erase me from my children's lives. Richard and Veronica became bolder, their actions more overt, their lies more brazen. My children, once so open and loving, began to transform, their affection replaced by palpable distance, their words laced with unfamiliar resentment. The first wave of escalation struck at the heart of our weekly routine. Suddenly, pickup and drop-off times became fluid, deliberately altered without prior notice. Richard would forget their school books or accidentally schedule conflicting appointments during my visitation weeks. These were never overt refusals, always framed as minor oversights, yet they systematically disrupted our time. Lily and Tom's phone calls, once regular, dwindled. When I called, Veronica often answered, her voice syrupy sweet, informing me the children were too busy or just went down for a nap. If I got through, conversations were brief, guarded. Lily would sigh, "Mom, can't we talk later?" "Veronica needs me." Tom responded with monosyllables. They stopped sharing details of their lives at Richard's house, a wall of silence rising. This alienation extended beyond the home, seeping into their school and social lives. Lily, always diligent, suddenly struggled with a subject she once excelled in. When I offered to help, she snapped, "Veronica says you make things too complicated." She already got me a tutor. It was a tutor I was never informed about. Tom, once an avid soccer player, abruptly quit his team. Richard later told me Tom was bored and preferred spending time with Veronica's family. I saw subtle looks from other parents at school events, whispers that seemed to follow me. Richard and Veronica, with their impeccable public facade, were subtly spreading narratives about my supposed instability, my over-emotional nature, or my difficulty coping with the divorce. They painted me as the bitter, resentful ex-wife. Friends became polite but distant, invitations dried up. My reputation, once unblemished, began to fray, damaged by insidious rumors. The pain of watching my children recoil, combined with social ostracization, left me isolated and helpless. I was losing not just my children, but my standing. Driven by desperation, I sought legal counsel again, convinced the systematic alienation had to be against our joint custody agreement. My lawyer, Ms. Davies, warned me about the inherent difficulties. Courts are hesitant to disrupt a child's perceived preference, she explained. We need more than your observations, Victoria. We need hard evidence that they are actively manipulating the children. Our initial petitions were met with resistance. Richard and Veronica arrived at every hearing impeccably dressed, presenting a united front of concerned, loving parents. They brought Lily and Tom, who, coached by their father and Veronica, confidently expressed their desire to spend more time with them, citing reasons that felt chillingly rehearsed. "Mom just doesn't understand our schedule," Lily would say, or, "Dad's house is closer to our friends," from Tom. They even claimed I was too strict or always sad. The children's words, delivered with practiced sincerity, were devastating. The judge, swayed by the children's seemingly genuine statements and lack of concrete proof, largely maintained the existing arrangements, offering only minor adjustments that did little to stem the tide. Richard and Veronica, emboldened by their victories, grew even bolder. Veronica started enrolling Lily and Tom in new activities during my weeks, scheduling them to conflict with any plans I made. They changed the children's primary care pediatrician and even their therapists without informing me. Phone calls were rarely answered, replaced by curt texts from Veronica stating, "Children are busy. They will call you if they want to." Richard even changed the locks on the house, preventing me from accessing some belongings, claiming security reasons. The wall between me and my children felt impenetrable, reinforced by legal precedents and the children's seeming preference. I felt a cold despair. I was losing. They were winning, systematically dismantling my relationship, piece by agonizing piece. The system, designed to protect children, seemed to unwittingly enable their manipulators. With every failed attempt to reconnect, every court setback, a quiet, burning resolve solidified within me. Despair turned into determination. I knew I couldn't fight them in the open. They controlled the narrative. I needed undeniable truth, evidence so irrefutable it would shatter their facade and expose their villainy. My quiet nature, which had allowed them to inflict damage, could be honed into my greatest, most unexpected weapon. I would fight fire with fire, but my fire would be silent, precise, devastating. I began my meticulous, secret investigation. Every email, text message, social media post involving Richard, Veronica, Lily, or Tom was meticulously saved, time-stamped, and categorized. I started carrying a small, discreet digital recorder, capturing every one-sided conversation, every veiled insult, every manipulative refusal from Veronica. I subtly encouraged friends and acquaintances, the ones still loyal, to share any gossip or concerns they overheard from Richard or Veronica, especially anything related to the children or my character. I interviewed former nannies, teachers, and even some of Veronica's disgruntled former colleagues, uncovering patterns of controlling behavior. I learned to look for subtle cues in Lily and Tom's behavior after their time with their father. The imperceptible flinches, the learned phrases, the way their eyes started nervously. I invested in forensic software to recover deleted messages and obscure online activity, unearthing shocking exchanges between Richard and Veronica discussing strategies to manage Victoria and ensure the children prioritize us. It was a painstaking, emotionally exhausting process, often filled with doubt and loneliness. There were nights I cried myself to sleep, clutching a recorded snippet of my child's manipulated voice. But with each piece of evidence, a chilling clarity emerged. I found emails from Veronica explicitly instructing Richard on how to frame arguments against me, suggesting phrases for the children to use in court. I discovered social media posts, quickly deleted but preserved, where Veronica subtly mocked my parenting. There were even audio recordings of Veronica coaching Lily on what to say to the judge, promising rewards for good behavior and showing loyalty. The emotional toll was immense, but the truth screamed at me from every file. My children weren't rejecting me, they were being systematically brainwashed. This realization, while heartbreaking, fueled my resolve. I was no longer fighting for visitation. I was fighting to free my children from a psychological prison built by their own father and his manipulative new wife. I had amassed an arsenal of undeniable truths, a mountain of irrefutable evidence. The time for a silent, devastating counterattack was approaching. The moment I held the irrefutable audio of Veronica coaching Lily's court testimony, I knew I had them. Their perfect, unchallenged reign was about to meet its spectacular, public undoing. The courtroom, usually a place of sterile formality, hummed with palpable tension. Richard sat stiffly beside Veronica, their faces a picture of composed confidence, their hands clasped in a show of unity. Lily and Tom sat in the front row, their expressions carefully neutral, though I caught Lily's nervous fidgeting. The air was thick with expectation, a stark contrast to the quiet resolve within me. My lawyer, Ms. Davies, finally rose, her voice calm and steady, beginning her opening statement. She spoke not of accusation, but of a mother's relentless pursuit of truth. "Your Honor," Ms. Davies began, her voice clear and resonant, "we are here today not to argue about visitation or financial disputes. We are here to uncover the truth about a calculated, systematic campaign of parental alienation designed to sever the sacred bond between a mother and her children. We will present irrefutable evidence that Mr. Richard Vance and Ms. Veronica Vance have deliberately manipulated Lily and Tom, poisoning their minds against their mother, Ms. Victoria Hayes." Richard and Veronica exchanged quick, dismissive glances, a faint smirk playing on Veronica's lips. They clearly believed this was just another desperate attempt from a bitter ex. But as Ms. Davies began to present the evidence, their composure began to crack. She started with a series of time-stamped emails and text messages. The first email, from Veronica to Richard, casually discussed adjusting Victoria's access to the children's school portal to avoid her interference. Next, a series of text messages from Richard to Veronica outlining how they could subtly encourage Lily to feel uncomfortable at my home, detailing instances where they could create inconveniences during my visitation weeks. A collective gasp rippled through the gallery as Ms. Davies brought up the bombshell evidence. She presented screenshots of social media posts, carefully preserved, from a private account linked to Veronica. One post, quickly deleted but recovered, showed Veronica making a thinly veiled joke about my supposed emotional fragility after a school event. Another, from Richard, subtly praised Veronica for handling Victoria's latest outburst, fabricating a scenario that never occurred. These subtle public smears, designed to reinforce their false narrative, now stood exposed in black and white. Then came the audio recordings. The courtroom sound system, usually used for testimony, crackled to life, filling the room with Veronica's unmistakable voice. The first clip was short, chillingly clear. Veronica, whispering to Lily, "Remember, darling, your mother gets very upset if you don't choose Daddy's house. She'll say you don't love her anymore. You don't want to hurt her, do you?" Lily's small, uncertain voice was barely audible. A collective murmur swelled through the courtroom. Richard's face, which moments ago had held a defiant sneer, turned a sickly shade of white. Veronica's eyes, wide with sudden, searing panic, darted frantically between the damning screen and the rapidly changing, horrified faces of the bewildered onlookers. The next recording was even more damning. It was Veronica, rehearsing lines with Tom. "Now, when the judge asks why you prefer to stay with us, remember to say it's because Mommy is always sad and her house is too messy, okay? And don't forget to mention that she never takes you anywhere fun." Tom's hesitant voice could be heard, repeating the phrases, coached into betraying his own mother. Lily gasped, her hand flying to her mouth, her eyes fixed on the screen, a dawning horror spreading across her face. Tom, beside her, visibly flinched, his head sinking, tears silently streaming down his face. The judge's jaw visibly clenched. The final piece of evidence was an internal email from Richard's real estate firm, dated weeks before the divorce. It detailed a strategic plan for Veronica to ingratiate herself with my children, explicitly mentioning isolating Victoria and establishing primary emotional influence. This was not just manipulation, it was a premeditated, professional campaign. Richard stammered, attempting to object, but his words were drowned out by the rising uproar. Veronica, her perfect facade utterly shattered, sat frozen, her face a grotesque mask of desperate fury and utter defeat. She opened her mouth to speak, but no words, only a strangled gasp, escaped her trembling lips. The elegant courtroom, moments ago filled with celebration, had transformed into a stark, unforgiving stage for their spectacular, public undoing. Their meticulous planning, relentless ambition, cruel manipulation, it had all been their ultimate, self-inflicted downfall. The aftermath of the courtroom revelation was swift, merciless, and utterly brutal for Richard and Veronica. The judge's ruling reverberated far beyond the courthouse walls. Richard's real estate firm, once a pillar of the community, found its name irrevocably tainted by the scandal. Clients, many of whom were present, began to withdraw their contracts, citing ethical concerns. His meticulously built empire started to crumble. Veronica, whose carefully cultivated public image had been her most prized asset, became a pariah. Her professional career, already on the rise, was abruptly extinguished. The architectural firm where she had recently secured a prestigious position quickly rescinded their offer, and other opportunities vanished. She was publicly disgraced, her name synonymous with deceit, forced to seek anonymity elsewhere. They both faced further legal scrutiny for professional misconduct stemming from the revelations. Their perfect, unchallenged reign had ended in utter, public ruin. For me, Victoria, the journey of healing had just begun. Lily and Tom, initially stunned and bewildered by the raw truth revealed in court, were confused, but also visibly relieved. The burden they had carried, the unspoken pressure to choose, had finally been lifted. Tom, hesitant at first, slowly began to revert to his old self, seeking out my hand, sharing small details of his day. Lily, though still guarded, started to look at me with something other than cold distance, a glimmer of the warmth I had longed for. Our reconciliation was not instantaneous. It was a delicate, painstaking process, facilitated by mandatory family counseling where, for the first time, we could openly discuss the manipulation. Slowly, patiently, we began to rebuild our fractured bonds on a new foundation of honesty and trust. They understood, with the help of therapy, that my fight was not against them, but for them. My own life, though irrevocably changed, found a new, profound sense of purpose. The community, upon learning the full, devastating truth, rallied around me with an overwhelming outpouring of genuine support and profound regret for their previous misjudgments. My landscape architecture business, initially crippled by the false rumors, experienced a remarkable resurgence. Clients returned, eager to offer heartfelt apologies and to unequivocally renew their trust in my integrity. My old friends, deeply ashamed of their previous gullibility, extended sincere gestures of support, patiently rebuilding bridges that Richard and Veronica had so cruelly attempted to burn. My home, once a lonely reminder of what I had lost, became a sanctuary filled with the tentative sounds of my children's rediscovered joy, a testament to resilience and hope. This agonizing, transformative ordeal taught me a profound lesson. True strength lies not in overt confrontation or vengeful retaliation in the heat of the moment, but in quiet, meticulous observation, unwavering patience, and precise, intellectual preparation. Richard and Veronica sought to utterly destroy me with cunning lies and public humiliation. But their own digital breadcrumbs, their unchecked arrogance, and their careless disregard for the truth ultimately became the precise instruments of their spectacular, self-inflicted undoing. Sometimes, the most satisfying revenge is not about actively inflicting pain, but about the quiet courage to allow the unvarnished truth to simply speak for itself, emerging from the shadows to expose the darkness for all to see. It is about the triumph of poetic justice, delivered not with a furious shout, but with an undeniable, resonant, and utterly silent revelation.